Thanks everyone for joining. My name is Jesse. I'm the COO of Auggie. As you know, the number one community is Auggie for parents to connect, share recommendations, and learn from experts just like Caroline. I'll let Caroline introduce herself in a minute. And just to give a little bit more about Auggie, as you know, here we support parents through every stage of their life, from expecting to expect all the way to being a parent of multiple children and everything in between. Sometimes, of course, the support that we need during these moments come at more challenging times, and those need to be dealt with just as thoughtfully, which is why we're really excited to have Caroline here today. At the end of the event, we'll be randomly selecting a giveaway to receive a personal strategy session with Caroline, so be sure to stay tuned for that. And we'll be doing some Q&A at the end. If you have any questions that come up along the way, feel free to drop them into the chat, but Caroline will make sure to address all the Q&As at the end. Awesome. From here, I will hand things off to Caroline. And Caroline, if you're able to spotlight your screen, and you can hover over the, so let me see. Go ahead and get started, and
Okay.
if we're able to, if I'm
Is
able
it
to
the
change that, we
three
will.
dots next to mute?
Yeah, but I'm having trouble finding the spotlight button now.
Huh.
Do you know what? Go ahead and
Okay.
get started, and I'll take a look at that.
Okay. Well, hi, everyone. My name's Caroline Schrank. I'm happy to share information that is a really hard thing to go through, but I feel like I have been through it and I'm so happy to be on the other side of it. Um, so my personal story is about 16 years ago, my father died. He died after an illness, so I was taking care of him prior to his death. And so it was not an unexpected death. And one thing I want to say is what I'm talking about today is the death of a grandparent, not a tragedy death, not something, unexpected, something that is sort of the cycle of life and how we go through that with our kids and the best way to have them have as healthy an experience as possible. And what happened to me was I got a call at 3 in the morning from the social worker that my dad had passed away. And as you know, as parents, you don't really like to be woken up at 3 o'clock, even if it's your own kid, let alone that phone call. And I woke up, and when the kids woke up, I had to call the funeral home. And I hung up the phone and I was like, he wasn't that nice to me. Like, my father just died, and I had a 2 year old and a 4 year old at my feet. And I really didn't feel like I was getting the support that I needed. And so that's where the idea for becoming a funeral director and starting Ripple came from. It was really to evoke change and how this whole process goes down and the support that's needed. And we really do get support in every other life event, and death is something that's complicated. Oh, I'm just admitting someone. And so, what I really want to talk about are, first of all, the importance of the topic, and that discussing this with your children is probably the worst thing that you will have to go through. It's a feeling of knowing your kids are going, if they're of age where they will understand, which, just to go over briefly, 2 to 5 is still where they think it's reversible. They don't really understand the word death, but they've had a relationship with a grandparent and they're no longer there. So again, they're not going to comprehend everything. They're going to look to you for your emotions and probably model a lot of your behavior, but they're also going to have their own experience through this. And from 6 to 11, they kind of understand. If they've lived near a grandparent or seen a grandparent, they're going to understand the loss. They're going to probably understand that it's final, that they're dead and they are not coming back. And then from 12 to 18, they pretty much understand. So the first thing I want to talk about is, the conversation where you're seated on the couch. I've been thinking about this. I'm like, where else can you do it? You can't really do it anywhere else but the couch. And it's a really hard thing to do. My advice is to push the words out of your mouth and be there for your kids, model healthy grieving. I know you're afraid of saying something that will traumatize them more, but really the best thing you can do is tell them that this is going to be hard. We are going to get through this as a family, and I'm here for you to support you in any way you can, and it's going to get better each day. It's going to get a little bit better. They may be scared. They may not even know the words to talk to you about what they're feeling, but I feel that the only thing really to do is to be there for them. Um, don't ask them questions that they can't answer. Don't ask them how they're feeling. Just support them and tell them. One of the things I would probably share is that you can be two things at the same time. That you can be sad that you're missing your pop, but you can also go out and play with your friends. There's no set rules for any of this. And we are new to this and we are doing this the best we can. And to talk about how old they were, that this that they that he had lived a long life or she had lived a long life, and that this is part of a process. Now, of course, if you are religious and you have God and a community, a church, a temple, that's going to take a lot of this off your plate. But the initial family conversation should really be one of, we're going to get through this as a family. Um, and then the next thing I really want to talk about is where this not wanting to talk about death comes from. And when I was thinking about this talk, I was like, I don't even like, this is a horrible thing to talk about. Why do we talk about it? And the truth is, we don't talk about it enough. And that's why there's so much fear associated with it. And what I will say is for you as a parent to start having the conversation with your aging parents. The worst thing that can happen when you've had this loss and you're dealing with your children's sadness is that you're bogged down with choosing a funeral home, wondering what they wanted. Um, there's so many variables that have to be taken care of after someone dies that the best thing to do is to have all of that taken care of. So what does that mean? That means having a conversation with your parents. And if that's a difficult one to have, I'm not saying to guilt them, but I'm saying, look, this is going to be really hard for me. It's going to be hard for my kids. And I would like to have as much information from you about what your wishes are and what you would like to see happen so that we have a plan to follow. And that will give you a lot of relief. If you're distracted with making funeral plans, calling people, deciding, what kind of memorial you're going to have, that's a full-time job. And I would like for you to have the time to be with your family and be a unit and do things that are probably more normal than you being distracted with having all of the plans. And, you know, it's hard for you to have a conversation with your kids if what you know is to not talk about it. So really backtracking and talking about openness and what they want, and that can go as far back as having a plan for when they are aging and what their plans are for what they want with their death. So we're trying to limit as much chaos as we can in this and sort of bulk everything, put everything in different places so that you're not completely overwhelmed. Um, and then also to talk about how your kids will feel. They're going to be sad about their grandparent. They may not quite understand it, but they're going to see you sad. And for me, that was one of the hardest things. And what I can say about that is to be honest and to tell your kids, the truth that you're sad, but that you will get through it and you will be okay because they're going to look to your emotional how you're feeling. You know, it's a shared grief, but it's also an individual grief. And so they're going to look for you for how you're handling it. When my father died, the day my father died, I got my car towed. I parked in a walkway. And so you're going to be so distracted that you're going to need as many things clicked off your box as possible. When my mother died, my younger son was in elementary school, and I would drive him to school. And 3 days in a row, I got into a car accident. By the third day, the traffic guy was like, "Just go, like, just go. You've hit 3 cars, like, just go." And my son and I talk about it, and it's I'm sure it was traumatizing for him. I'm sure he was not feeling safe with me. And you want your kids obviously to feel safe with you. And then the next piece of this is what is the memorial funeral? What does that look like? Again, having a plan in place is the best thing. For kids, I think we've changed so much in this field. So the traditional moldy funeral home service is not the norm. However, if it is, I would make sure there's a caregiver for your kid, make sure you have snacks, make sure that there's a space where they can go if they don't want to participate. And if they do want to participate, that's amazing too. There's many things that kids can do. They can write a letter and put it in the coffin. They can tell a story if they want about their grandparent. As much as they want to be involved, is fine. And um, yeah, I mean, I think it's about choosing a different path than was modeled to you and really equipping yourself with as much knowledge as you can so that when you talk to them, you're talking clearly, and you can be upset, but you can talk clearly and be confident. Um, and then in terms of disposition methods, which is something you may not know about that can affect, how the whole thing how it all plays out. There's the traditional, what we call a funeral is a traditional service in a funeral home with a body present. Sometimes there's an open casket. Again, that depends on religion, and that can be traumatizing for kids. I'm not into shielding kids from anything except for that. I think I would shield them from seeing a dead body. I mean, we've all heard stories of people being traumatized by that. And then with the popularity of cremation, which really what happens with cremation is the body is separated from the event. So with cremation, you can still put notes in the casket. Um, you can do that, but then it opens up what the memorial looks like. And for me, for my dad, what I did was I had a memorial in the house that I grew up in. We my whole family was there. We all sat around and told stories. And although my kids were too young at the time, their cousins told stories about, how Pop Pop was beating them at racquetball when he was in his late 70s. So it became more of what Jewish people call the Shiva, which is where you connect and you tell stories, and you're really not supposed to be sad then. You're supposed to embrace the person and who they were and celebrate them. And for kids, also, what I like to do is, like at my dad's memorial, my dad was a longtime shareholder in McDonald's. And we used to joke to him about that's why he was allowed to eat it. And so we had a plate of hamburgers, and Pop Up loved McDonald's. And so the kids saw that, something that can connect them to the person and not make it so scary. And yeah, and then also community is really important. When my dad died and I had 2 young kids, a lot of the focus was on me. My friends called and said, "We're coming, we're going to be there for you." And I really needed help with my kids. I needed someone to drive my kids to school. I needed someone to walk the dog. I needed dinner on the table. So at the end of the talk, I'm going to share a resource that I work with. They're called Support Now. They're like a better version of GoFundMe. They don't charge. The way they make money is you can round up your contribution, but it's an organized way for your community to come together and help you. And believe me, you need help. You may think you're okay, but you have grief brain, which is actually a diagnosed thing. It's like having a concussion. So do not try to do what I did when I had my kids, which is you wake up every morning and you say, I have two things to do today. I need to take care of myself and I need to take care of my kid. And that's what you do. You say, I need to take care of myself and I need to take care of my kid, and delegate, delegate, delegate. And then your kids will see that life goes on, and it's not, they will pick up on there if there's a lot of chaos and trauma and emergencies and fighting. So by fighting, I mean with the internal family. If plans are not made, sometimes siblings get involved and there's complications there. So really, my core message is to start the conversation with your aging parents now, to have as much in place as you possibly can, and to be prepared in terms of, we always talk about books for children. What are the best books for children in grief? And I am going to share a resource, which is Pollen, and Micheline curates books for children about death. And my advice on that and her advice on that is pretty much the obvious, which is get these books before you need them. So have them in the house. So that's something else that you don't need to go and shop for and worry about. And you work your way through it each day, and the kids will see your resilience and that you are able to move through this. And the duality of grief is that it comes in waves. We have good days and we have bad days. We have good moments and we have bad moments, and nothing is going to be perfect for a little while, but we're gonna get through this. And the other resource is a company called VoiceThread. And VoiceThread is an amazing company where you can do this for a memorial, or you can do it to share with your kids, and you can do it before a grandparent passes away, which is you put a photo on a voice thread, and then you send it to a family member or a friend, and the person comments on the photo and tells a story. So you could actually put together a whole storybook about your kids' grandparents, starting from when they were little. You could start with their childhood and tell their whole story. And this is something that your kids might go back to years after. One of the harder things about losing grandparents when your kids are younger is that they don't see your kids grow up. And through VoiceThread, there's so many things that you can talk about that your parent might have in common with your son. For instance, my younger son is an amazing mathematician, and my dad was an amazing mathematician. So you could have pictures of their graduations and where they went to school, and they can see that even though their grandparent isn't around, they share a lot of traits, and it's a really wonderful memory tool. And then Support Now, which I will share a link to, is an amazing organization where you can set up a registry, you can set up people to help you. You can, if people, you can be blunt and you can say, I need money, I don't need flowers. Flowers die and they're not worth the money, and people want to help and they don't know how. And this is an amazing way for a channel to have people help you in an organized manner. And then the next thing is the Death Deck. And the Death Deck, you can buy it on Amazon. If you go to their website, I am going to share a 20% discount link. And this is a tool to use when you are talking with your parents about having what we call the conversation. And it's an opener. It just gets the conversation going. And again, you want to model healthy grieving, and healthy grieving starts with you. And the only way to do that for your kids is if you're prepared and you have your ducks in a row. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer. Oh, raise your hand. Hi, Tanya. Can you hear me?
Yep, I have my
Hi.
lens closed. I just wanted to see if I heard something correctly. And to be fair, I was kind of multitasking in the background and I was going to type out a comment, but I was like, let me just see if I heard what Caroline said. Did you say that you don't encourage folks to allow children to see the dead?
I mean, that's a personal preference.
Can I share some thoughts?
Sure.
So I was on the board of directors for the National Home Funeral Alliance. We wrote an entire guidebook about communities caring for their own dead and opting out of the funeral industrial complex if that's something that they want to do. There is a section that I wrote on involving children in community death care, inviting them into the space. I think choice really matters here. I think forcing a child to see a dead body can be very traumatic, but depriving them of that opportunity can also be traumatic. So I'll drop a link to a video that I love by a game warden named Kate Braystrup, who tells a story about a 5-year-old who asks to see her dead cousin. And choice matters. And then if you can, invite them in to engage in ways that feel meaningful to them. Some of the sweetest moments I've seen are kids who get to do somebody's hair or paint somebody's nails or help put their tie on or lay flowers on their body. And it's a very, very special moment for a lot of them as long as they opt into it.
Yes, I completely agree with that. And in fact, I was going to talk about green burials and how those are much more kid friendly. I was referring to like an open casket in a funeral home and an embalmed body. Like a natural state of a body is definitely a choice that a parent can make with their child. I think and you're talking about a home death, so we're not talking about a scary funeral home where, everyone's gathering and dressed in black. If there's an easy transition in a home, I think that that's a wonderful option. But again, it's up to the choice of the parents. I was talking about the makeup casketed scary movie dead body. I'm very I'm not I'm a funeral director and I'm not in support of the practices of the funeral industry. So I'm with you on that. I think that's a wonderful option. I just think that that's such it hopefully will be a bigger portion of the community that does home funerals, but for right now, that's not always an option. In fact, I had a case, a family in New York, and they wanted to have a wake, and the son was, worried about money. And so when the father died, he called me and he said, now the family members are saying they want a wake. And I said, okay, how about this? Can they come today? Can you turn on the air conditioning? Can you wipe his face with a washcloth? And can you have everyone who wants to see him come see him? The wake is right now. And he did. And he said, I can do that. I said, yes, you can do that. You can keep him home for 72 hours. If you don't want to do that, I will come when you're ready. And so they did have the wake in the home. And he called me at 7:30 and he said, we're ready. So to your point, I think that's a good point that there is an option for kids. I'm just talking like traditional pushing your kid up to the casket at the wake or the funeral and having them be traumatized. So only a parent knows what a kid can handle. And that's, yeah.
The last thing I'll say about it real quick is that even if it's a casketed death, even if it's a traditional death, I still think they deserve the choice to be offered the opportunity. But if you want to give them guidelines about what they're about to see, what they may look like to kind of prepare them for that casketed viewing, because in the event of me who has lost grandparents suddenly and did not have the opportunity to see their body before they were in a casket situation, I still think that it matters to give that choice and then inform them of what might look different about them. Thanks, Caroline.
Great. Anyone else have any questions? They can feel free to drop them in the chat as well. Anyone? Oh, did I hear one? No. Okay.
Yes, I on that note, like I just attended my grandmother's funeral a few weeks ago with my 5-year-old. And he did see her body, and was very curious and asking a lot of questions. And I'm just curious how you might explain, like I think he, understandably had a really hard time wrapping his head around like her body is here, but she's not alive. And like, just sort of, I would love like your tips on how to, I know there's probably books about this. I don't have any. I know you mentioned some, but just like, how would you go about explaining that to like a 5-year-old?
I mean, you
And it
can,
was, I mean, to be fair, like he didn't really have any sort of relationship with her because she lived out of state. And so I think, he'd met her one time when she was still already very sick. So um she was already sort of an abstract concept to him, I think, but it was still just really hard for me to explain like her body is here on earth, but her soul is not here anymore. Like just even just the concept of like a soul, I was like, he has no baseline for what that means,
yeah, I mean, I think it's personal preference. I think, um, religion can come into it. I think it's very personal. I personally, when I see a dead body, I can tell that the soul is not there. I don't know if a 5-year-old can see that, but yeah, I mean, she was sick and she was old and they tried to help her and she died. And we're celebrating her life and we are having her body here in attendance, and her soul is present around us. If we want to feel her, we can try to do that. It's really hard. I mean, there's no, they, like you said, a 5-year-old doesn't really have a concept. And I think it's about choosing what your beliefs are and then finding something to back it up. Like figure out how you want him to perceive it and then find some Micheline would be a great resource because she curates books on grief. So that would be she's also waived her $20 curation fee if you mention Ripple. So you could reach out to her and tell her that and she'll find you a book.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry for your loss.
Thanks, Marianne. Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Really appreciate your taking time out of your day to spend with us and Caroline. Thank you so much, Caroline, as well, for sharing your wisdom and expertise. We'll be following up with everyone with some more information, and we'll be selecting a giveaway winner as well and putting them in touch with Caroline directly. We hope you found this event valuable and are excited to see you at our next one. Feel free to shoot an email to the Augie team if you have any questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
What?
I thought the sun was going to be hot. The sun.
Oh, yeah.
It's not now up there. Let's go over for this. We'll come back. Said it. I might feel cold, I come back in. Yes, I'll go down the end of the road. We'll come back up. We can't walk on the sidewalk without sidewalk. Just we sit there, come up there, back there.
What are we gonna have for lunch?
Get everything done this week.